I got pulled into an old Rockefeller Records rumor that runs so deep, I spiraled.
So I'm reading this book, What Would the Rockefellers Do? And every time I think about the Rockefellers, I think about that Nas line in Ether.
He's puffy. Rockefeller died of AIDS, that was the end of his chapter. And that's the guy y'all chose to name your company after? Put it together.
And I'd be like, why did Nas lie like that? None of the Rockefellers died from AIDS. But according to Genius, Jay-Z didn't name his company after Rockefeller. He named Rockefeller after a street hustler in Brooklyn that actually died from AIDS.
What up, words? Your boy Charles Brown back again, talking facts. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Keep sending those Cashaps to CLBMG. I appreciate you. Gang, listen. You know how Kendrick says the rabbit hole goes deeper? I promise. Well, this rumor that I had never heard of until literally a day ago got me spiraling down a black hole trying to figure out what's true and what ain't. And I want to talk about it. So what happened was I put a video up about Jay-Z and Nas battle. Simple. Ether versus Takeover battle. I put it up. Easy. Something simple. We all can discuss that and have fun with it, and 20 years later still have our little debates about it, right? So someone checks me in my video, in my comments. They go, Nas was never talking about Rockefeller. He was talking about Rockefeller from Brooklyn, not the rich Rockefeller that everybody thinks he's talking about. What I'm referring to is the line where Nas says, Rockefeller died of AIDS. That was the end of his chapter. And this the guy y'all chose to name your company after. For years, most of us assumed he was talking about Rockefeller, who is Rockefeller, let me tell you who that is. I got stuff all over the place. I went down a rabbit hole, right? So basically, John D. Rockefeller died in 1937. He was a prominent figure in American business and economic history. And in 1937, his net worth was an estimated $1.4 billion, which was 1/5 of the US GDP. So that's who Rockefeller is, right? Now, most of us who are sane already knew that Rockefeller was considered the world's richest man. And we assume that Jay-Z and Dame and Biggs named Rockefeller Records after John D. Rockefeller, right? So the guy goes in my comments, right? Salute to the team that's in the comments, different individuals such as Curtis and other people. And he goes, he's not referring to John J. Rockefeller. Jay had a man called Rockefeller who died from AIDS. And that's who he named Rockefeller Records from. I'm like, wait, what? So I'm like, what are you talking about? And then another comment goes, you don't know the street dude? The Brooklyn hustler? Rockefeller? Shaking my effing head, right? They basically calling me out saying, I don't know my street history about Brooklyn drug dealers in the 80s. And I don't know what I'm talking about, because I literally said in the video that Nas wasn't factual when he said Rockefeller died of AIDS, because we all know Rockefeller did not die of AIDS. AIDS was not even invented back in the 1930s. Not even invented, but it didn't exist yet, right? So I'm like, what are you talking about? In my mind, I've never heard this rumor ever. This is something that's new to me, and I feel like I know almost, I want to say, a high level of hip-hop trivia and hip-hop things that have happened or alleged to happen. I've never even heard this rumor in my life, that there's some Brooklyn drug dealer that not only was he popping in Brooklyn, right? He was so popping that Jay and them revered him so much that they named their label after Rockefeller. And Rockefeller died of AIDS in the 80s. But you know me, I'm not going to stand for this. I need proof. I need proof that Jay, Dame, and Biggs named their label, one of the most successful labels in the history of rap. They didn't name it after the billionaire white guy. They named it after some random black hustler on the block in Brooklyn. I need to know, gang. So what do you do when you need to know something? You go to Google. I start Googling. First thing I come up with is this video on TikTok. The dude says pretty much same thing. Rockefeller Records was named after this Brooklyn hustler. No name, just a Brooklyn hustler, right? I go even deeper down the rabbit hole. Now, man, you got tap. I'm all in. I'm in Google now. I need to know more. So I hit a couple. I read it. It ain't much about this. It's very scarce. So I Reddit posts and some quota posts, right? So I see this post in I think it's in the quota, and there's some Reddit stuff. I'm gonna get to that. But it's by a guy named Roy Smith. And he goes, Jay-Z's label is named after a Brooklyn hustler named Rockefeller who lived in Farragut Avenue and allegedly died of AIDS when it was first becoming an epidemic in the black community. From Jaz-O's, Jay-Z's mentor, song Love Is Gone, they put a quote up. The quote goes, Rockefeller had the crown on the block, him and Saint getting bent. I was 10 looking at them intrigued. Now, this is supposed to be a quote from Jaz-O from one of Jaz-O's songs. If you don't know who Jaz-O is, that's who Jay came in the game with. They had Hawaiian Sophie fame, as we all know. And allegedly, Jaz-O is shouting out, Rockefeller had the crown on the block, him and Sink. So I'm like, damn, that's pretty hard proof. If Jaz-O is shouting out a man named Rockefeller. But then I'm like, is it though? He didn't say nothing about Rockefeller, anything after that. He just said Rockefeller had the crown on the block. I need more information, right? And I heard that there's a guy named Sink, but I don't know nothing about. It could be a guy named Rockefeller, a guy named Sink, but that don't mean they named their company after him, right? So let me keep it. I need to find out who Rockefeller is, because gang, if you pull up most of the big-time drug dealers, somebody that you're going to name a multi-million-dollar record label after, they're going to have some rep outside of, we don't know who this guy really ever was. We just know he existed. So my spidey sense start tingling. I'm like, what if they just made this whole thing up? So it wouldn't look like Nas, the greatest lyricist alive, told a bald-faced lie. And they're trying to find somewhere in here to find out who this hustler, Brooklyn hustler is, right? Rockefeller. So I start going even deeper. I scroll down in the comments, right? Scroll down, looking even deeper. And I find a guy named Scott Tompkins who says he lived in the Bronx. Here we go, somebody on the ground with some insight. Now we're going to get to the bottom line of who this hustler and Rockefeller is, right? So Scott goes, there is no hustler in Brooklyn named Rockefeller. DeHaven is who you're referring to, and both he and Jay-Z have always gotten along, at least in front of me. So Scott has firsthand knowledge. There ain't no hustler named Rockefeller. Never has, never will. This is according to Scott. He said they made fun of DeHaven because he was flamboyant or a member of the LGBTQ. Rockefeller Jr. died of old age, and there is no place on the entire internet that says he had AIDS. DeHaven had AIDS and is an optometrist, last seen working at a Tangier Walmart. This is according to Scott. Jay-Z named his label Rockefeller because aside from Carlo Gambino, he was known as the richest man in the world. Nas lied in his raps, and New Yorkers known this since 1993. He's saying Nas been lying in his raps since 1993. Nas spoke out of place because Jay slept with Nas' wife. It's an old topic, but if you need to know the beef, it was squashed. They forgave each other and even do music videos and a single performance together. One love. Now, this is according to Scott. Now, this is interesting information, gang. This is a guy on the ground in the Bronx that says there ain't another guy named Rockefeller in the entire borough. But wait, there's more. I go down even further down the rabbit hole. I find Sandman Santiago says lives on the streets of New York, wrote this 3 years ago. He said, I have never heard of nobody named Rockefeller from Marcy or Brooklyn in general. Why are people just making shit up? This is weird. Online is weird. By the way, I'm from Brooklyn, the old Brooklyn, just so you know. So this is Sandman Santiago from the old Brooklyn, right? Not the new Brooklyn, the old Brooklyn. So now we got two guys on the ground saying there ain't nobody named Rockefeller nowhere in Brooklyn. So I'm like, gang, this is getting interesting. So I'm like, let me find out, let me check my source. What's the source? Let me go back to the video on TikTok. I'm gonna go back to the video and I'm gonna see where this guy's source is. So I go back to the video on TikTok, right? And let me see if I can find this guy's name of it. So you'll know who I'm talking about, who made the initial video in the first place, right? This guy, Black Kids Read 2. That's his name of his TikTok channel. His video, when he zoomed in on the actual quote, Rockefeller died of AIDS, that was the end of his chapter. It was a clip from Genius. And if you go to Genius, it says all of that stuff that I told you earlier, right? Now, when you go and read it, you go a little deeper into the clip that he used for his video. It is a Genius annotation, which means somebody wrote this, they contributed this to Genius, some random person. So now we got a random person who these quotes are responsible for so I'm telling you, all over Twitter, all over the internet, as I researched this thing, there were at least 50 or more people who were talking about this Brooklyn hustler named Rockefeller. You didn't know that? You're not up on that? Or all of these people use this information in this Genius note. The only place that I found these words, that there is a Brooklyn hustler named Rockefeller, was in Genius, on the Genius site where you get the lyrics, the rhymes lyrics, where they post everybody's song lyrics. The only place that this information is there. And that one contributor, right? There's one contributor who wrote this information. Let me get his name. Let me see if I can find it. The one contributor is Hail Rail. He wrote this 15 years ago. Hail Rail, and the annotation was accepted by Veggie Crumble. This is on Genius. This is the only place online where they're saying that none of the Rockefellers ever died of AIDS. Rather, Jay-Z's label is named after a Brooklyn hustler named Rockefeller who died of AIDS when it was first becoming an epidemic in the black community. And then they have that same Jaz-O quote. From a Jaz-O song, Love Is Gone, Rockefeller had the crown on the block, him and Sink getting bent, I was intrigued. This is the only place online that you can find anything about this mysterious Brooklyn hustler. It's one random quote from one random user named Hail Rail on Genius. So that is the only place that all of these people, I got a little confused because people were coming at me like, you don't know this Brooklyn hustler? You have no idea what you're talking about? You got a YouTube channel and you ain't up on Rockefeller from Brooklyn? So my mind gets to thinking, and you know me, what's the next thing what Charles gonna do? He gonna start making sense. Let it make sense, Charles. So let's try to make this make sense. Jay-Z has never once rapped about this guy. Please show me the lyric where Jay-Z says, I named Rockefeller, or Rockefeller, anybody named Rockefeller that he used to know on the block from the 80s that died of AIDS. And as a matter of fact, if Nas is correct, if there was a Brooklyn hustler who died of AIDS and you named your company after him anyway, in the first place. Now, let's just be honest. You know that Jay-Z, it says right here, I pulled it up on Wikipedia. Rockefeller Records was an American hip-hop record label and music management company founded by record executives and entrepreneurs Sean Jay-Z Carter, Damon Dash, and Kareem Biggs Burke in 1994. Carter issued his debut album, Reasonable Doubt, in 1996 as the label's first release in a joint venture with Priority Records. So they named this thing in 1994. That guy had been dead in the 80s. So that would mean Jay-Z Dame Dash and Kareem all agreed in 1994 to name their label that they were about to make millions of dollars off for a random drug dealer that you can't even read. You don't know who he is or where he comes from, and he died of AIDS. They decided to name their record label after him. They never talk about him again. They don't bring him up ever again in the lore of the label. And if you go anywhere online, they've never discussed this guy ever, not even once. On Wikipedia, which they could have easily corrected, it does not mention this guy nowhere. No Brooklyn Hustler, no Rockefeller. We've never had a shout out for this guy. The one line of Jaz-O, I don't even know if he really says Rockefeller in the line. I never even looked at it, right? So with that being said, I'm still unconvinced. I get another lead in my comments. WC6081, he goes, exactly. He's talking to Curtis. Exactly. Redman had an RIP skit on There Is a Dark Side to the Man. So he's just cracked the case. There is a real Rockefeller, and he's on Redman's album. Redman shouts out Rockefeller. That's the guy. Go check that song out. So guys, that's what I do, guys. I go right to that. I go right to that album. I go right on Genius. I click the link to the album. And guess what? There is a link. There is a song called Rockefeller, R.I.P. It's a little skit. It's a dude rapping. I'm like, oh snap, we cracked the case. There is a Rockefeller. But then I'm thinking, I'm like, wait a minute. Let me read more into this. It says, I go to Genius. It says, this interlude right before the track, Rockefeller, a single from There Is a Dark Side, you can hear Redman's deceased friend Rockefeller kicking a freestyle here. How is this Redman's deceased friend when Rockefeller died in the 80s of AIDS? How can it be that this guy is a friend of Redman's and he's rapping on There Is a Dark Side, but he passed away recently? It's not the same guy, gang. It ain't the same guy. So once again, that is debunked. There Is a Dark Side, the Rockefeller R.I.P. interlude is not the Rockefeller that was the big-time drug dealer on the block. We've never heard one story of this. I haven't. And right now, all the drug dealers from the 80s, they all got a story right now on YouTube. Every single one of them. Supreme, all these guys, they got stories after stories after stories. Most of them, especially if they was of note, if they had enough muscle to get a whole label named after them, I would assume it would be all kind of information about that guy. If they named their entire label after this guy, it should be tons of information, pictures. Now, if somebody's out there from Brooklyn, they could dispute what these guys are saying. From New York, the guys that claim they're from the city, right? If we can get y'all to get in the comments and dispute it, but as of right now, it is what it is. And I'm going to even go any further. They're downright rude about it. Like, they're downright rude online about, if you don't know this guy. Look at just one quote from 2013. This is 11 years ago. He go, Nas stands, help me out. Can y'all drop me a link to this dude, Rockefeller, that has nothing to do with Nas or Ether? Let me see. There's more to this thing. There's a couple more. Let me find these other links, these other quotes. Because there's some really, 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 really weird quotes like this one. It says, it is known the only people who thought Nas meant an actual Rockefeller were Jay-Z stans who jumped at the chance to catch Nas spitting some smart, dumb shit. So that is a literal quote from somebody who thinks only reason we don't want to believe it, or because we didn't know, we wanted to trip Nas up and say Nas was lying. Now, my opinion right now, at this point in time, I'm going to tell you what my actual synopsis is of this case. I don't think there was a Brooklyn hustler named Rockefeller. There is zero information. There is one quote, and that one quote could literally be a very resourceful, or not even resourceful, a very imaginative Nas fan. They come up with some crazy lies online, gang. I'm just going to be honest. I think that this guy, it don't take much to think of that. Oh, it's a hustler in Brooklyn. That's who they named him after? Why would you name your label after a guy and never, ever once show him love? There's no song for this guy. There's not even a verse. There's not a line about Brooklyn's Roc-A-Fella. This Jaz-O thing, that was before Jay-Z was probably even rapping. I don't even know. I mean, we probably didn't even have an album yet when Jaz-O said Rockefeller had the crown of the block. That's a random dude. And let's say there is a Rockefeller that's in Brooklyn. It's a reach to say that's who they named their label after. It kind of don't make no sense. Let's just be honest. Like, this gonna sound harsh, but dudes in the 90s, in the mid-90s and late 90s, they wasn't really thinking that them dudes from the 80s was that legit that they was gonna name their new stuff going forward after them, right? That's like me being from DC and now I got Rayful Edmonds record. It don't make no sense. I'm just being honest. Make it make sense. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave it at here. I want you, if you got some information on Rockefeller from Brooklyn, right? I'm sure there probably was it might be a Rockefeller from Brooklyn, but I don't think that he was strong enough to get his name labeled in this song, and then he didn't get this label named after him. I think exactly what they said it was, and I'm gonna tell you what they said. What most people believe that the label, it is a play on words. It is pronounced Rockefeller, suggesting that its founders Jay-Z, Dame Dash, and Biggs Burke were self-made millionaires like the wealthy industrialists. But its spelling is a variation of Roc-A-Fella, meaning their words rock the listener. And I'm going to give you one more thing that they say why this label was called that. I have one more thing for you, gang, and I want to get this out there because it's very important. Very, very important. They basically saying that the label name comes from a guy named Tone Hooker, I believe they said his name was. He was the inventor of the label, and he combined the name Roc-A-Fella. It was supposed to represent dudes that, I know it sounds crazy, because now I said, y'all Rockefellers, y'all rock that, but it's supposed to be you Rockefeller, like you rocked them with your raps, and you also, it was a combination of Rockefeller and you rocked them with your raps. I think it was Tony Hooker. I can't actually find that one, but there is another person involved with the naming of the label. So with that being said, I'm going to conclude there is no Rockefeller Brooklyn hustler, and I'm going to go even a step further that if there was a Rockefeller Brooklyn hustler, he was not the reason they named this record label Rockefeller Records. Let me know what you think. I'm thinking that the case is closed unless I get some more information. If y'all got something y'all can help me out and tell me, put it in the comments. And do not, I repeat, do not come with that same quote from Genius where they say, Rockefeller record. No, I don't want to hear that because everybody that said that copied and pasted it right from Genius or from somebody else who copied it from Genius. The only place it exists is on Genius, so I need more information. Don't tell me about Farragut Avenue because that's already out there. I need some pictures. I need some names. I need some cosigns, some stories. If you ain't got that, stay out the comments. Don't come with, you don't know about the street hustler? No, I don't. I'm going to leave it at that. CLBMG. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe. Charles Brown. Make sure you following us on all social media. The What Show every Wednesday night. And make sure you in the merch. Gang, I'm going to catch y'all on that flip side piece.
Look, mission impossible to drop a few lines without dropping old times when Southern Hill was still a gold mine. When pistol grips was my shit and I sold mine. When Alias was not a show and they told mine. Elevate your mind with high quality THC infused products. BlackYeti.com. Black-Yeti.com.
CLB.